And welcome back to our newest episode of Deliver More, the only talk show that covers everything you need to know, want to know, and didn't know about Teflon coatings. As usual, I am your host, Francesca Vavala, and I am here with two esteemed guests that are the tried and true Teflon godfathers of the world. Chris Lord, also better known as Wolfie. Why don't you say hello to the people, Wolfie?
Hola, people.
All right. I like our we're going international now.
Yeah.
And of course, Mike Patterson. Give everyone some love.
Hey everyone, how you doing out there? Chris, Francesca, great to see you.
Always good to see you guys. Love getting together and getting to chat. And I think I'm really excited about this topic because it is one that is the most asked on the interwebs. It is the most memed question of all time. And it is the thing that is, I would say some people are even having infused thoughts about this. And the question really is, how does Teflon stick to the part? Because we all know that Teflon is known for its incredibly slippery surface, its non-stick properties. And so it's a very perplexing thing to the layman of how does that actually then stay on a part to get there? So that's what we're going to be covering today. And it may sound pretty basic, but I think it's incredibly important. And Mike, when I first proposed this topic to you, you actually had some feedback, some experience with it. Do you want to share with everybody what happened when I suggested that we do this topic?
Sure. Yeah, it was funny. It was about a week ago when you and I were talking, I think, a little pre-production type conversation, and you brought this up, and my initial knee jerk was that this is kind of basic. I'm not sure the audience will really get much out of it, but literally 2 hours before you and I spoke, I had a call with an engineering group at a large aerospace company, and we spent 45 minutes talking about this exact topic as far as how to get proper and excellent adhesion of the Teflon to their parts. And having walked through this conversation with them, it gave me a whole new appreciation for the fact that just because I know the topic well and Chris knows it and a lot of coders out there know it, a lot of people don't, and a lot of people aren't as experienced, and this might be the first time they've run into an adhesion issue and are trying to really kind of correct that. So there's more to it than meets the eye, and so I thought it was a great topic for us to dive into.
Sure. I love to hear that. Well, then let's dive in.
Do it.
Wolfie, do you want to start us off? I mean, from my understanding, it's not just one thing that is
Sure.
that makes the Teflon stick to the part. So can you walk us through sort of the basic outline of what people are going to hear today?
You mean the answer is it just does? And we just
Just
walk away at that point?
It's like,
Yeah, surface prep is the major one. And we've seen, problems with surface prep over the years. I know one time, pictures always help, and we had a total delamination situation. And, underneath the coating, that part was shining like my forehead is right now. I mean, it was crazy. And we're like,
you can just turn down your light for that,
yeah, yeah, we were like, did that guy do any surface prep at all, or he just fired away? And so that surface prep, that grip lasting is like one of the main things that you start off with, because the part's got to be cleaned, no matter, regardless of whether it's new or whether you're doing a recoat. You've got to clean the part. You got to do grip lasting. Because it does two things. One, it cleans the part. It gets, oils and residue, but it also creates that surface profile. And that surface profile is huge, because it's going to anchor that coating down. It's going to give it more surface area for it to grab onto. So that is number one. And there's different ones. There's different levels of surface profile you can put on the part. I mean, for a one coat, it's going to be a fairly light profile. For something that's, 20, 30 mils thick, your anchor profile could be 2 mils,
Right.
in depth, so you can get it to anchor down. So, I mean, that's one piece of it. Mike, what do you think? I mean, there's obviously other parts of the surface prep equation too.
Yeah, I think the surface prep, like you said, is really the key element of adhesion. Um, and one of the things we look for too is how are you roughening a surface, and specifically, what are you roughening it with? We always recommend aluminum oxide. So one kind of go-to is 80 grit aluminum oxide at 80 to 100 psi. So that's kind of a good starting point for most metals. But if you have exceptionally hard stainless, it might require more aggressive, larger grit or higher pressure, different angles that you do the grit blast. And so there's a bunch of little nuances to that. But aluminum oxide really gives the peaks and valleys that you look for to get that tenacious bite of the coating and more surface area, frankly, is what's happening. You can blast with other things like steel shot, or some people talk about using garnet, or Star
Star Blast.
Blast is the
Yeah.
one brand that they used to
Jinx.
sell. There's plastic media. There's a lot of things you can blast with, but those tend to give more of a rounded surface profile versus the peaks and valleys. So we will always kind of go at that, and I think that's one of the big things that's real important, because there's two parts of adhesion: the mechanical part, which is what the surface profile does, and then the chemical part, which is what the coating does, or the
Mm-hmm.
primer or the one coat
Right.
stuff. So we can only control, the customers can only control the mechanical parts. That's why we really try to emphasize doing the best possible grit blast on the parts.
That makes sense. And so, is there ever a time when you're roughening the surface with just like a piece of sandpaper? I mean, is there ever a piece like
Mhm.
where it's such a thin part or a soft metal? I'm just kind of spitballing here because I don't
Yeah.
do this, where it's not a grit blast or as harsh.
Yeah,
There is.
that's a good
Yeah.
segue. Yeah, there's a couple things there. Metal mass, definitely is something you have to factor in, because you could
Mhm.
have a thin piece that you're like, man, if I blast that thing, I'm gonna warp the hell out of it, and it'll never be the same. We'll never get it back to where it used to be. So, yeah, hopefully you don't have like 1,000 parts, where you're like, "Oh, I got to sandpaper all these." I mean, that's obviously not going to work. But we have a product, that could enter into that equation, and you get into like an acid primer, that actually etches. There's a chemical reaction with the metal where it'll actually etch the metal and it'll create that bond. And that's the only product that we have that's like that. But it's a player, and that's why you see it used in maybe some medical situations and things like that where you have small pieces or very fine pieces that just can't be grip blasted, and they need
Mhm.
something like that.
And that's how you
So,
still prep the surface, is that acid primer.
well, you actually
It
just
helps.
utilize it because it
Okay.
helps with that adhesion. So,
Okay.
And I think a lot of it also, Francesca, is like we always say, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. There may be somebody's application where it's a thin metal or a soft metal, and all they can do is just do a sandpaper. So while we would say that's not the best way and it's not optimal, it might give them enough
sure.
to allow the coating to stick enough and perform well enough in their particular environment. So, it's easy for us to say, oh, you should do this, but it's not always real world applicable based
Hmm.
on their part or their environment.
Can they see? Is it a visual cue when they've actually prepared it enough, when the surface is prepared, or is it a touch thing? How do you know that it's done right?
Well, I mean, it can be visual for sure. I mean, obviously that shine's not going to be there. You're going to actually see more of a dull look to the surface because there's obviously an etch in there.
Hmm.
You can feel it as well. There's also a profilometer that you could use, which will actually give you the profile of what you just employed. So I mean, that's something you could definitely utilize as well.
Francesca was stunned by profilometer.
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 I was like,
Hey,
do we should we bleep this out? We're not talking
I
about
know
profilometers,
that
right?
could take us in the wrong direction completely, but I think
Some
I said
people,
it right. So,
you can under
Good
the
protection.
microscope, like the microscope, you can see
mm,
it and stuff.
Mm.
You don't really want to touch it too much because you don't want to put your oily finger on the part. But even with the glove, you can probably still. But the biggest visual is that your coating doesn't peel off. I mean,
yeah,
that's
right,
like the
exactly.
biggest visual.
All
Hmm.
right. Okay. So that's step one there. And it's probably the most important step you're saying is that the surface prep, you cannot skip this
Yeah.
Right,
ever. Clean
right.
surface prep. Cool.
I
There's
mean,
two other things, Mike, that we talked about, like, handling the metal before you even do it. Before you even do the grip blast, is like a thermal degrease. If you had like a part that was like in super maybe oily situation, or lots of debris and things like that that could be on it, you might do that just to try to bake that out. Or if you have a cast part, you want to take it up to cure temperature before
outgas.
you even apply any coating to get it to outgas. So those are just a couple of other tricks that are
Hmm.
out there. Now that's not every situation, but they do come up.
Is it by industry, by part shape? Is it
Could be.
like depends on if it's a recoat versus a new coat?
Oh,
The
100%.
answer is
Oh,
all
it
yes
definitely
to
could be.
You
those.
just
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Very cool. So surface prep, number one. Mike, what's number two?
Number two is actually a pretty easy one, pretty quick one to diagnose and to overcome, and it's really coating thickness. And in this case, specifically, what we're talking about is the primer thickness, because if you apply a primer too thick, it'll then cause intercoat adhesion problems. So it's
What does
really
intercoat
important.
adhesion problem mean, just for people who
Yep.
don't know?
Good question. And so when we think of adhesion, and we get questions like this where people go, my coating's peeling. The first thing that Chris and I or Steve will try to do is understand, is the coating peeling from the metal, or is it peeling intercoat, meaning the primer and the top coats are coming apart? So the easy way to tell is when it peels off, can you see the bare metal, or do you still see the primer?
Mm.
And if it's a substrate adhesion issue, then it's usually grit blast, or could be number three
Mhm.
on our list.
Right.
If it's intercoat, it's almost always the primer's too thick. And in that case, what happens is that the top coats won't adhere properly to that primer, and they'll have a chance to delaminate from the primer top coat interface. So,
Gotcha.
so like typically primers go on thin, like very thin.
Sure.
When you spray
Mhm.
it on, you can almost still see the metal through the primer. So a very, very, very common mistake we see in people's shops is that people spray primer on so that it looks really good and looks like, if it's a black primer, it looks nice and, great, dark, deep shade of black. Well, now you have about 2 mils of coating on there, and it'll cure down to about 1 mil, and it should be 3 or 4 tenths of a mil. So,
Mm.
it's really important to have a good feel of how thick this primer is going on, because it's not just a visual thing, it's a performance thing. And frankly, color and your final color shouldn't come from your primer anyway. It's typically going to
Sure.
come from your top coats.
Yeah.
So, really get a handle on those primer thicknesses, and you can alleviate a lot of problems and recoats down the road. So it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And one of the
So
things that we
thinner is
run
better.
into a couple times too is where folks are putting two coats of primer on, and we're like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And
Why
like,
are they doing that? Like, what's
uh,
their thinking? Are they going to
uh,
cut back on using the coating and they're,
appearance.
oh, okay.
It's an appearance thing. It's, either, they're not that, adept at spraying the coating, and, maybe they might have had some thin areas, and like, well, we'll fix that. We'll just make it, all our coaters do two coats of primer. But, we
Mm.
ran into that when at an on-site, and we were like, you do that every time? Like, they're like
Yep.
every job. And,
Miss wasting primer. I mean, we're
and
happy
wasting.
to sell more primer,
Yeah.
but it's it's a problem. And here's where it comes from too, Chris, is we hear this one all the time. We're like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't know. This is what they taught me.
Yeah, the guy that started it's gone, been long gone, and nobody ever questioned it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was, and plus the bottleneck you're creating. I mean, you talk about slowing the process down. I
Yep.
mean, that's
Big time.
crazy.
Because
But
do the primers have to be cured as well?
mhm.
Flash dry 'em,
Yep.
in
Okay.
some cases. I mean, you can go wet sometimes and go like dry over wet, like if you're doing powder. But
Hmm.
in most cases, yeah, you're gonna do a flash dry for
Yeah.
sure.
So save yourself time and save the part any problems by priming it thinly, or according to, I'm guessing there's a TDS sheet on
Yep.
how
Oh,
much
sure.
to use.
Yep.
Okay.
And they're all basically the same too. So the best thing
Mm.
you can do is with new sprayers is get them adept at recognizing there's how thick a primer should go on, and there's about 1 mil, then that's what a top coat should go on. If they can get that feel and that visual, that's a big favor you're gonna do your team.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Very cool. Chris, anything to add?
No, the only other thing is like, with our one coats where you're not utilizing a primer, it's not that same situation. I mean, that if you're,
Hmm.
you're being too generous with it, you may see other things. Post cure might be, orange peel type of look, or maybe even like cracked or
Mud
something like
crack.
that. So, that's not, that's why
It's a
Mike was
different
really
thing.
specific. Like it's really primers where you're going to run into this problem.
Okay.
So,
Good. That's a good differentiation, because people might think like, well, if it's just a one coat, then it's a primer
mm,
and coat in one. So
yeah,
I want to keep
I'll
it thin.
do it
No.
every
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
we're selling no
Yeah.
coating because people are being too thin with everything.
All
So,
right. Not too thin, not too thick. Find that Goldilocks.
right,
There you
right.
go.
Okay. So we've got surface prep, we've got prime correctly, and then it's time for the pied resistance. I don't speak any French. The most important part, I'm guessing, which is what?
Well, it's going to be your cure. We don't have anything that's air dry. Everything gets cured. But if you underbake, that's where you're really going to run into the problem because you haven't, kicked off the cross linking and things like that, where the coating's not set, and you're going to be like, okay, well, underbaking in a lot of cases, I mean, it may look like it's supposed to. I mean, you may see it
Mm-hmm.
and be like, yeah, that's the color I should get or what have you. But there's going to be other things that will tell you, maybe the surface hasn't been smoothed out. It's still rough because it didn't flow out, things like that. Or, some people have rudimentary tests. You could do the fingernail test. And if you did a fingernail test and you just started peeling that coating right off, then that's, if you felt comfortable about your blast profile and things like that, then it's your bake. And that's really door number three, of where we're going to check. And I'm trying to
Yeah.
think of anything, what else Mike is in there on that underbake situation for cure.
I mean, it's just a lot of stuff. Underbakes are a problem for a lot of things because these coatings are designed, like Chris was saying, they have to melt and flow, but there's also things that need to burn off and be degraded from the coatings, like surfactants and flow agents and all kinds of stuff like that. So, if there's ingredients that are still in there that shouldn't be in there, that's going to ultimately affect your performance also. So, really having a good handle on getting that metal temperature to the right temperature and leaving it there for the correct dwell time, you take all the questions out of the equation.
Sure.
So, it goes, there's a lot to go into it. We always say like, God, this is the last steps. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you get to the last mile of the marathon and then you decide you're going to, you want to stop. Like,
Crawl.
yeah,
Right.
like get through it, do it the right way and thermocouple your part and make sure you cure it the right way. And you can avoid a lot of unnecessary issues because, to have something peel at the end, because Chris said you can do a fingernail test. Some people will do a crosshatch test the first time they do it, but
And what does
those are
that
both,
involve?
that's like there's a template and you cut 100 little squares and then see if tape will peel any of the squares off. And if it more than a couple peel off, then it's a failure. And so that's a really good adhesion test. It's a very common adhesion test, but it's destructive. So as soon as you do that on your part, now the part has to get recoated. So
Hmm.
it's typically kind of like a pre-process thing people do to make sure they're doing things correctly. But nonetheless, you don't want to have adhesion issues, by skimping at the end or doing something like that. So we
Sure.
always want to see people do that. But I think if I was to rate of the three things, Chris, what presents like if you were to rate the three of them out of 100, how much is surface prep? How much is coating thickness? How much is cure of the troubleshooting you do?
I'll be honest. It's
Yeah,
probably
lie. I
it's
want you to lie.
probably it's probably it's probably
Finally.
cure. Honestly, I really think
You
cures get
do?
kind of go sideways a lot.
You think
Um,
that's what's like when people have adhesion, you think it's mostly because they're undercuring?
for adhesion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably a kind of more of a mix between that surface prep and the cure. Um, I'll be honest, yeah, maybe even all three, because I mean we do get the intercoat adhesion thing quite a bit,
Right.
where people mess that up, where they
Hmm.
just are so generous with primer, and you're just like, yeah, they show you a picture and you can see the black primer still there,
Yeah.
and you're like, this has got to be, too thick of a primer application. So I don't know, man, they're pretty
It's a good
equal.
balance. I feel like I
Yeah,
run into surface prep more than anything, but
yeah,
one thing with Cure that came up in that call I had Francesca that I talked about earlier is they had an interesting scenario where they had an assembly that they needed to coat that came to them prefabricated, and it was part of the fabrication is it had some adhesives or epoxy or something that they had to leave it as such. So therefore, they couldn't take that part up to the normal cure temperature because it would burn off the adhesives and then ruin their assembly. So their whole thing was like, okay, well, they think they can do a light grip blast, great. They were just doing a one coat. So let's just say they control the film thickness, and now here we go. Now they can only cure it at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's a real problem because right away I know they're walking into that booby trap where adhesion is going to be compromised because they're doing such a low cure. So there's times like that when a lot of coders get handcuffed almost because of the nature of the part that they're challenged to provide a coating on.
yeah.
So those are ones that it's difficult for us to say, oh, here's your solution because I mean, there's not one almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense. So it sounds like people won't really realize that they have any problem necessarily until they're done the cure and then see that there's a failure. And then it's reverse engineering to be like, where was the failure?
sure.
Is that
Yep.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good synopsis of it because unfortunately anything you do along the way would be destructive to figure it
Mm-hmm.
out.
yeah. Yeah, we always say that, when if people are just getting into this or new coders or what have you, is a lot of times those situations don't reveal themselves until you've done the whole process. And then it's a fact-finding mission to backtrack, all your steps to find where that gap was. And we
Yeah.
usually do. I mean, we do a lot of stuff, troubleshooting from here, with pictures and phone calls and things like that. Yeah, it'd be great to be on site so you could actually see, but we're covering, US and Canada. So it's kind of hard for us to be everywhere. But we can get to what, Mike, you think about 95%, probably maybe even better than that of
Hmm.
of the, what the problem is or root cause just through phone and pictures and
Oh
things like
yeah.
that.
Pictures and video are a huge help and people
Yeah.
being honest about what's going on. That's the biggest thing. Because if
Yeah.
you call in there and want us to troubleshoot, we love doing it, honestly. But if you just say, I just did what's on the TDS, then I mean, you
Then
won't have a
it's,
problem. So-
Yeah.
yeah, I'm being like, well, then something's not adding
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. You're
They're
not going
not
to like
being
my next
honest
question.
like Chris. Yeah. And in terms of prevention, as you get new coders on the line, or as you have people, the old dogs teaching the new kids tricks and tips and
Pups.
stuff, do you have any suggestions for how to like make sure you should pass on this wisdom when you service prep, like in a sentence or one piece of wisdom for each step?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's a tough one because I mean a lot as much as there's like science and chemistry going on, there's also like just experiential
Yep.
feel and like the black art of spraying and
Mm-hmm.
and seeing how things react because it's a hotter day or a cooler day or the humidity is up or whatever it might be. There's so many things that can vary, let alone the parts and the geometries and the metal masses and the types of metal. There's so many variables. It's hard to say, oh, here's one sentence for each phase of this that will make you go from novice to master. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
if it was that easy, everybody'd be doing it.
That's very true. Yeah, which we
Sure.
know they're not.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, we're on the honor system here too with them. It's like, don't give us the canned answer. I had a problem. I really didn't look into it, but I'm calling Fluorogistx,
Yeah.
and I got to get Mike on the phone because something's going wrong here. And you get like they didn't put really much effort into actually trying to figure it out themselves. They want you to do it. And it's like, oh, listen, man, we're gonna have to go back through the entire process. But also, how often do they look at their processes? Like we were talking about, like the two coats of primer for everything that we do was started a long, long time ago. Nobody ever questioned it. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
ever, thought like, why do we do that? Or, look through your processes and is it time to, maybe check ourselves a little bit as to why we do what we do? Because, for some folks that have been there for a couple of years, it may not make sense to them. They just do it. And it's like, is it
Yeah.
right? Is it
So
wrong?
don't go on the automatic,
Yeah,
mindless kind of, okay, it's always been done this way. That's the most dangerous phrase in the English language is kind of the
sure.
Yeah,
quote on that. I can think of two ways that you could definitely at least prevent any kind of major mistakes along the lines or slipping into the ways that have always been done, but somehow always fail. And one is scheduling an on site training with the
sure.
Sure.
Fluorogistx team so that you can come in, get your shop audit, see what you guys are actually doing versus what is being said. And there's no shame in that. What I've
None.
seen you guys do is like, oh, okay, I get it. Why are you doing that? I'm going to ask you questions. And then we're going to actually debunk this, deconstruct it, and then show you how to do it properly. You're going to see a world of difference. So I would say that's prevention step number one is call Fluorogistx and schedule an in-shop audit. And number two is make sure your oven is correct, because if you
Right.
have a crap oven, or if you're not thermocoupling, or if you're not, if you're just going for a time bake and things like that, then you're really going to be missing the mark more often than not, I would imagine.
True.
True. And
True.
Chris and I have especially Chris, a lot of hours in the last week dealing with a coating issue that pretty much, as we traced it back, is all due to poor airflow in an oven.
Mhm.
So it's like things like that that we really don't run into on the day to day, but because it was a unique part and the airflow was poor, it led to some application issues. So, all those things weigh into it. That's what I mean. There's like a million little nuances, which honestly, that's kind of the fun part for us. As long as we've done it, we're still running into some other ones that we haven't maybe encountered in a few years or ever for that matter, that it's fun to kind of dig into and learn more about and figure out how to overcome those barriers.
Yeah. And I know, Wolfie, you talk a lot about this on the Wolf Den
Sure.
for people who need a shorter kind of bite-sized version about their ovens and their cures and how to make sure that they are doing things correctly. So guys, make sure that you check out that video next. And I think that pretty much covers everything that we needed to know about how Teflon sticks to the part, because that's kind of it. Then the Teflon's on there and it's not going anywhere. Correct?
You got it.
We hope so.
That's the goal.
Excellent. So I assume that you guys are dressing as Sherlock and Watson for this Halloween. Can't wait to see it. Excellent. Well, that concludes this episode of Deliver More. And I really appreciate you guys taking on even the most quote unquote simple questions that we know everybody still has out there. And I think you do it in such a way that is approachable, relatable, fun, and easy to digest. And I hope everybody that's listening, watching thinks so too. So any final words before we sign off?
Keep the calls, keep the emails, keep the questions coming. We love it. I mean, this is what we like to do. And so don't ever hesitate to contact Chris or Steve or myself.
Yeah, keeps me sharp, man. Keep the questions coming for sure.
Actually, no shame in that game at all. Wonderful. All right, guys. Well, that is all from us, the team at Fluorogistx, and myself, Francesca from Tech NKT. And we'll be seeing you next time from Delaware. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. See you.